How do you find targets? Well, let me give you some of my tips and tricks of the trade. The first thing I do is I ask people who makes a good target for this. And if people keep on mentioning the same company, I'm likely to call them up and say, hey, what do you think? Another thing I do is I look at the size of the market. Is it a big market? Well, if it's a big, humongous market, I probably need a big company to exploit it. So I'm going to look for a large company as a target. On the other hand, if it's a small little niche market, I'll look for a smaller company as a target. If I'm licensing, for example. If I'm thinking about being acquired, that's what I want to do, then I'm going to look up and down the supply chain and see who's trying to vertically integrate, because they may be inclined to pick me up. So basically, it's kind of common sense where you look for a target. First thing you got to remember is in the strategy session, we talked about this intersection. You know, I've got my 4 Ps and some strengths and weaknesses. Who can fill those gaps for me so we can get to market? So that'll constrain who makes a good target. But within there, then I'm trying to focus down a little bit more to figure out who I'm going to pick up the phone and call. I like to look at people's websites, by the way. That's another good tip. If you look at the websites, particularly read, if they're publicly traded, that is, read the annual reports, read what the chairman of the board and the president say about their goals for the company. The guys and the women who talk about being technology leaders are obviously more attractive targets than the ones who don't, because you're hawking a technology. So there's a variety of kind of almost common sense tricks you can use to begin to hone in on who makes a good target. The important thing, however, when you're looking for targets is to always remember what it is you're trying to accomplish. Because the target has to provide the capabilities you lack, or you will never get to the market. Another thing when you're looking for targets is don't always get hung up on the big, humongous applications. Sometimes a smaller niche application is a better one for you to start out in, and then you can diversify into the larger ones. Let me give you an example. We're doing a project right now for a government agency. They have a better way of making a solar-powered water heater. My employee who's doing the analysis starts talking to a bunch of experts and end users. It turns out there's not a lot of interest in that. Most people in residential and industrial markets are looking for solar panels they can put on the roofs that will generate electricity so they can reduce the electricity costs, the fuel costs, all of that kind of stuff. And they want the power to come out in a kind of harmonic purity so that if they're not using it, they can sell it back into the grid. So off-grid solar water heaters, which happens to be the character of this technology, are not of a lot of interest. Now, as I mentioned before, I used to work on a cattle ranch, so the second somebody says I have a solar water heater, I'm thinking, where else could you use it if it's not in a house? And it strikes me, I remember being out in the pastures and in the fields, and we'd have the cattle out there, and cattle are pretty stupid. They don't eat snow, they don't knock holes in the cricks with their hoofs to drink water. You gotta give them a trough and then they'll drink. And we'd go out every day and we'd hack the ice with our axes and open it up so they could drink out of the creek. Well, suppose I have a solar-powered water trough. Hey, that might work. So we call up some USDA extension agents in Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, places they raise cattle. Sure enough, they say, yeah, that is still a problem. The water troughs are still a problem. If you can do it at the right price point, that may be of interest. So now who's my target? My target may not actually be a solar panel maker or a solar water heater maker initially. It might be somebody who makes water troughs because they understand the problem. They see the market opportunity. So I license it to them and I give them the ability to turn around and pass their license, in other words, to sub-license it to somebody to make it for them. So then my target is somebody who understands what they call the pain point in the market and understands how to sell the technology, and they're just going to a vendor and saying, make me this specific item. So you got to be a little creative when you think about the targets. You want your target to be the person who's going to see the value of the technology. You can always find somebody to make it. Okay, enough about targets. I've just sort of been rambling on this one. I don't know why, but it gives you some tips on how you think about it. So I'm going to walk back over to the computer, see what the next topic is, and I'll be back.